Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome to the final episode of the Ben 10 Crossover Retrospectives, for now at least. And today, we're going to be discussing the fourth televised crossover that Ben 10 has taken part in, Ben Gen 10. And now, in the previous videos, I've typically started these vlogs by talking about the shows involved with a crossover, but for this crossover, both shows are actually ones that we've seen before in previous videos. On the Ben 10 side of things, we got the Ben 10 reboot, and for the show that it's crossing over with, we have, well, Generator Rex. So I'm not going to be wasting a lot of time by talking about the premises of both shows, as I've already done that before. As such, I'll instead talk about the background of the special. Now, again, I didn't do a lot of research on this. Actually, I did no research. But I will at least give some context for the special itself. And essentially, this special was one third of the finale of the Ben 10 reboot. Like, earlier this year, Cartoon Network released 3 specials that were meant to signify the finale of the Ben 10 reboot. And all 3 specials were like 44 minutes long and did something kind of big that would essentially be like did something very big and important in the universe of Ben 10. Like, the first special was called Ben 10,010, which involved us meeting the reboot version of Ben 10,000. The third of these specials was called Alien Extinction, which involved reboot Ben not only facing off against an evil version of himself who lost his family, went nuts, and became Alien X, who began hunting his alternate selves across the multiverse, but also involved him teaming up with other versions of himself representing the other shows. Side note, have not seen that special yet, really want to. And for the second special, we have, well, a crossover between Ben 10 and Generator Rex. As such, now, when this special was originally announced, I had already planned to do these vlogs. And as such, I was originally planning to just, go to Crossover Nexus and then be done, but with the release of this special, I knew I'd have to add it into the fold, so, I admit, like I've said in previous videos, I was not a fan of the reboot. I was not expecting to go into this special and come out of it and come out liking it. I fully expected it to be maybe somewhat entertaining, but mostly mediocre. Have some things in there that I thought were interesting, but overall still have a lot of the same problems that the reboot itself had. And ultimately, I just thought that the special was just going to be maybe passable at best. As such, when I sat down and watched it for this video, I did not go in with high expectations. However, once I finished watching it, I was surprised to find that I actually liked it. And I would hazard to say it actually is pretty good. I mean, okay, it does have a few minor problems here and there are a couple things that do signify that I'm still watching the reboot, but overall, I did not think this special was badly done. Why is that? Well, let's get to the plot summary. Now, in terms of story, this takes place near the end of the summer, and the episode actually opens with Ben fighting Hex. Ben, of course, ends up trumping him, and Hex, of course, retreats, licking his wounds and vowing vengeance, but Ben is essentially like, "Oh, this is nice, But Ben is essentially on a high from the victory and just kind of enjoying himself, etc. But the thing is that him, Gwen, and Max are currently stopped at Washington D.C. for just some much needed R&R. And the thing is, Max and Gwen want to essentially take full advantage of this R&R because, well, summer's almost over. Ben, of course, is not exactly happy with this because he thinks, "What? No, summer's just started. We can't do this." To which Gwen points out about all the insane, weird stuff that they've encountered throughout the series, and that yes, at this point she's probably preferred going back to school over dealing with more of that. But Ben, of course, is not exactly happy about this. He doesn't want to go back to it. He thinks school's a waste of time. No, he wants to keep going, having adventures. But Max and Gwen tell him eventually the adventure has to come to an end. Something that Ben doesn't exactly like before he decides, and ultimately in a huff he storms off. Though he does take a s'more from Max before he leaves. As such, he just kind of grumbles to himself and has a weird, trippy, very odd moment where his s'more talks to him and relays that maybe maybe he doesn't just want to lose the action, but maybe lose his family. It's weird and out of place, and the fact that that it's actually very character driven is somewhat disturbing for me. So I opted to somewhat ignore it and move on. But it ultimately does end with Ben deciding to eat the s'more before someone comes in and takes it. And those people are Bobo Haha and Rex. Although these are not the same iterations that we are familiar with from the original series. It's the same characters, obviously. Like, they both have the same designs as their counterparts from the original Generator X series. In fact, they both even have the same voice actors, which surprised me when I realized that, because Rex's voice is clearly turned up is clearly put up a few octaves, because it's not like how it was in the original series. However, this Rex and Bobo are significantly younger than the versions that we're familiar with, as this Rex is actually struggling with his powers, barely knows how to control them, and he's not affiliated with Providence, at least not in the way that the Rex in the original series was, which I'll get to when we get later in the story. But the point about this is Rex and Bobo are stealing Ben's s'more because they're hungry. Excuse me a second, dog. Okay, that's taken care of. Anyway, so like I said, Rex and Bobo end up sharing the s'more, but Ben, being ticked off that they stole a snack, plus seeing the talking monkey, decided that he would chase after them, and honestly, it kind of makes sense that he would go cannibal for this. Hold on. Again, so sorry about that. My dog is determined to ensure that these vlogs don't go all the way through without at least one blunder. So, yeah. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, Ben went cannonbolt. So yeah, Ben. But of course, Ben, seeing the talking monkey, decided to go alien and chase after the two. And when he learns that Rex and Bobo have eaten his s'more, he's not exactly happy and decides to go on a warpath. Well, actually, he just yells out that he's ready for vengeance, and and Rex thinks that Ben is an Evo and decides he needs to fight him. And as such, he summons his sword, and this is the first instance that we realize that he doesn't have full control of his powers, because even he doesn't know if this will work. But he manages to summon it, and he and Ben manage to get into a tussle, which leads them to, I think, the Lincoln Memorial, but don't quote me on that. As they're fighting, Rex and Bobo think that Ben continue wondering how this actually works, but during the fight, Bobo notes the symbol of the Omnitrix on Ben's chest and realizes that whatever it is, it's probably tied to a machine, and so he thinks that if Rex can get close to that, he might be able to do something, be able to screw with Ben. And so as Ben is rushing at Rex intentionally lets Ben land on top of him, and as a result, it allows Rex to get in close enough to essentially scramble the Omnitrix. Unfortunately, though, it works a little too well, as when Rex does this, it winds up screwing with the Omnitrix. It winds up infecting the Omnitrix with Rex's nanites, and essentially causes it to go haywire, releasing bursts of green energy from inside it that not only spread across Washington, but the entire eastern coast, resulting in everyone getting hit by the energy to transform into one of Ben's aliens. And they don't take the transformation well. Case in point, there is a family that was nearby who was trying to get a picture. They all got hit with the energy blasts, and they all start freaking out and begin questioning Ben, because during all this, he transformed back from Cannonball back to himself, and they think, how'd you do it? Tell us how to do it. And they immediately think this is his fault. Rex, of course, is panicking and doesn't know what to do, and he does think maybe he should help Ben, but Bobo says that they need to run, and they need to run now, because he says that sooner or later they will come. As such, Rex runs for it, and well, so does Ben. But sure enough, something does end up coming in. We see a white ship come flying down, and from the ship comes, well, Agent 6 from Generator X. And like Rex, he thinks that these people who've been transformed are Evos, and that Ben is caught in the crossfire. As such, he manages to dispatch the family, and he wants to know exactly what's going on, but Ben ends up blabbing that these things came from his watch, And so Six deems that Ben might be a threat and thinks that it needs to be taken into custody. Ben, of course, is not exactly happy about this, and so he ends up running away. And he and Six end up getting into a fight with Ben going shock rock. As such, Six ends up telling Ben about this world's version of Providence, how they're supposed to come in and stop extinction level events before they get out of hand. Of course, he tells Ben about what happened with the Omnitrix is kind of going haywire, and how this is all tied to Ben, how this is all kind of his fault. But as they're fighting, it turns out they have a visitor, Hex, who overheard the entire conversation and decides that he wants to take advantage of this. As such, Ben manages to take the fight outside. The fight manages to get outside, and as Ben is fighting Six, the Omnitrix of course goes haywire. But Rex, against Bobo's judgment, goes in and tries to help Ben fend off Six. They both manage to handle Six fairly well. But then Hex shows up and begins enacting his plan. And the plan casts a spell that turns everybody who's been infected with Omnitrix energy into his servants. His intent: have an army of Ben's aliens work for him to essentially take over the world. As such, Ben, Rex, and Co. do their best to try and fight off the army, but unfortunately, they can't really get far before they make a retreat, and thankfully do get away from Six. As such, to try and get some cover, Ben ends up taking Ben, Rex, and Co. end up going to the Rust Bucket. Unfortunately, though, there doesn't seem to be anyone in it. Ben assuming that Max and Gwen went out looking for him. As such, we get a nice little moment between Ben and Rex as they sit down, and essentially Rex further explains exactly what's going on and his connection to Providence. And it turns out that his connection ain't exactly right in this universe, while in the main Generator X universe, Rex worked for Providence and was a regular agent. This Rex is on the run. It turns out that we don't get a lot of information, and it's left vague on purpose, but essentially in this timeline, Rex and Bobo were essentially created by Rex's parents. Okay, Rex obviously, but his powers were a result of their experiments, because they were scientists. Unfortunately though, something happened one day. Something big, like during an experiment there was something went wrong, Rex had snuck in, and as a result of the experiment going haywire, there was an explosion, and after that, Rex doesn't remember a thing. But what he does remember is that after that event, Providence came in and took him and Bobo, and put simply, they were treated as prisoners. Rex and Bobo managed to eventually escape, but Providence have been on their asses ever since, pretty much trying to hunt them down because, well, as I've said, Rex doesn't have full control over his powers, and the thing is, they make it clear that while nanites and evos are a thing here, they're not as prevalent here as they are in the main Generator X timeline, because there everybody was infected with nanites, and only a select few would have the side effect of turning into evos. Here, though, they assume that anyone infected with nanites will eventually become an evo, and since Rex is infected with nanites himself and doesn't have full control over his powers, Providence deems him a potential threat and wants to get him contained, despite the fact that he is still clearly a kid and is very obviously scared, because because the sword thing that Rex created, that's all he can do. He cannot build any of his other machines yet, and he's afraid to try anything else, to the point where he thinks that he might actually be a threat. Ben does try to reassure him, and because of what Hex did, Ben thinks that maybe if Rex zaps the Omnitrix again, they can undo all this. But unfortunately, Rex ain't exactly all gung-ho about that, because he's afraid of what could happen if he tries. So as such, he ends up just running off with Bobo chasing after, because, well, yeah, he's just a scared kid. And even Bobo tells Ben that this is all new to Rex. He's not exactly a hero. He's just a kid on the run, and he's not and he doesn't really know what to do. Ben does try countering because he was new once too, but the thing is, and Bobo doesn't use the exact words, but but yeah, Ben is not Rex. They're not. Ben may take to this stuff. Ben may take to this stuff easily, but Rex it doesn't. He's dealing with his own problems. And while it's a good thing and while Bobo does give Ben a quote unquote pat on the back for dealing with all this, like Rex, yeah, Rex is just a scared kid who's scared but who doesn't know what happened to his parents. So it's not exact. So yeah, it's not exact. It's not like one of those things where you can just brush it off. As such, Bobo leaves to go chasing after Rex, but as that happens, Ben hears commotion coming from the rust bucket, and when he looks to it, he ends up finding Gwen and Max. And they've been infected. Yeah, it turns out, the rays hit them too, and Gwen has been transformed into forearms while Max is into Cannonbolt. And nice little detail I like, the designs for them, unlike all the other people who have turned, are their own unique designs, as there was at one point in the series where Ben and Gwen went back in time to the day Ben got the Omnitrix, so Gwen briefly got it and transformed into forearms, and in another episode, Max and Gwen went into the Omnitrix with Ben, and since they were close enough genetic matches to Ben, they were able to use the alien DNA, and as such, the Cannonbolt Max is here as the Cannonbolt he was there. Unfortunately, though, they're also under the sway of Hex's spell, so they want to kill Ben. As a result, we get this honestly kind of long fight scene where Ben is doing his best to try and fend off Max and Gwen without actually hurting them, since they're his family. But things are just getting worse, especially as Six is continuing to fight more and more Omnitrix infected individuals, and it's just getting worse, especially with Hex pretty much gloating about how he is going to take over the world and how this is only the beginning. As such, Six decides that things are getting too out of hand and decides to go for the nuclear option, as he contacts Providence and says they need to go Scorched Earth, which is, as it says, they're going to scorch Washington, D.C. to keep this from getting too far out of hand. As such, Ben, of course, unfortunately though, and as such, as Ben is fighting Gwen and Max, his powers the Omnitrix is going wonky, as every now and then he'll transform back and then go to another alien. And Rex is seeing all this and realizing that... Sorry, my echo over there. But Rex is seeing all this and realizes despite the fact that Ben's probably outmatched, he's still fighting, and this does eventually inspire Rex to go in and join Ben too, though Ben is doing his best to keep Rex from actually hurting Gwen and Max, because again, family. Unfortunately, though, as this is going on, that's when they learn about the Scorched Earth plan, and unfortunately, the army is getting too big. And as such, as the army is getting too big, Ben, Rex, and Bobo do a tactical retreat, and Ben and Rex convince Six that maybe they can give him enough time to try and fix all this. And while Six is skeptical, he does at least try and give them a shot at that, though Hex is making it more difficult because he wants the army, because he of course wants the army. Because they went into a museum, Hex uses powers to bring a mammoth statue to life, which Ben ends up fighting as Humongosaur, Ben and Rex, while Six does battle with Hex, and it's actually a pretty cool hand-to-hand combat, because we see Hex using more of his powers, and Six, of course, using his own natural skills. And eventually Ben and Rex are able to take out the woolly mammoth, and during the battle, Rex actually managed to gain access to more of his builds, including his giant legs, and of course the metal fist, which I actually love the reveal of the metal fist, because essentially Rex was in a do or die moment, and so Rex was back away from... Rex is the rough equivalent of back away from my friends, and in that moment of anger, he managed to build a giant fist and punch it away, which I think was really cool, though I could be misremembering that again. This is the only time I've seen this special, so apologies if I'm getting that wrong. But of course, Ben is like, cool bro, I'm glad you're able to do that, and they do eventually bring the battle outside, and of course they do eventually go outside to help Six fight Hex, but with the army getting bigger, Ben realizes that they need to fix this now. As such, when Ben transforms back, he gives Rex the chance again to hack the Omnitrix, and this time Rex takes it as he uses powers to once again talk to it, extract the nanites he implanted within it, and the end result is the Omnitrix sends out a second wave of energy but only this time it zaps everyone who's infected and transforms them back to normal, depriving Hex of his army and breaking the spell. As such, Hex, getting angry, wants to fight Ben, but Ben just goes wrath and kicks his ass, and so the episode ends, and so Hex is taken away by Providence, and he just swears vengeance again. In light of everything of the heroism that Rex has done, Six decides to give him Six tells him that he's going to go on a 5-minute vacation, and in that time, wherever Rex goes and what he does are none of his business. So essentially, he's saying, "Just get out of here, and I won't do anything." Though he does give Rex a warning that if he does ever loses control of his powers, the Providence will be on his ass. As such, Rex leaves, and as he's running, he sees Ben back at the Rust Bucket. They share a nice smile with each other as they both part, and Ben does finally admit to Gwen and Max that part of the reason that he doesn't want the summer to end is because Gwen and Max are his support team. And he thinks that if they finally split up, that if the summer's over, then he doesn't know what he'd be able to do without them. Which they reassure him that despite everything, they're still family and they'll always be there for them. Or they'll always be there for him, which honestly is a very sweet moment, and I like that. So, all right. So, what did I like about the special? Honestly, I think honestly, one of the things that I do genuinely like, the pacing is improved. Yeah, one of the constant complaints that I have with the Ben 10 reboot is the story feels rushed. A lot of the storylines for the reboot do feel like they're just trying to get you through the action. That they're just there, like there's not a lot of character, there's not a lot of analysis. There are moments like that, but they feel like they don't stick around long enough to leave an impact. But in this special, the plot actually moves at a rather decent pace. Nothing feels like it. There are only like a handful of moments here and there where things feel rushed. The rest of the time, the plot moves at a decent pace, and character interactions and motivations are shown to us at a rather excuse me, in a rather natural fashion. Case in point, the stuff with Rex. The stuff with Rex is actually treated very seriously, with very few jokes in between, and I think that's actually handled really well. Like when we first see Rex, he actually comes across the same way as Rex does in the regular show. And whenever he talks about his past or anything, there are no jokes. They actually give him time to essentially breathe. Whenever when he and Bobo are alone and talking, they have actual serious conversations about them being on the run, having to choose whether they will listen to their conscience or listen to their survival skills. Or when Rex is relaying his backstory to Ben, that actually feels like it has a lot of weight to it, especially as you see the impact it's having on Rex mentally just to recall that moment. And it helps too that this version of Rex is not adept at using his powers like the one from the original continuity. In this case, this Rex is still a kid, and while he has these abilities, he doesn't know how. They make it clear that he doesn't fully understand how they work. He knows how things are supposed to work, but but the thing is, like I said, throughout the special, the only the weapon or build that he used most often was the sword. The rest of the time was like when we saw other builds, it was near the end of the episode, and they make it clear in the episode that was just a spur of the moment thing. Rex is just struggling to do all this, and while he can still communicate with machines like he could in the original continuity, even that ability is foreign to him, as when he does hack the Omnitrix to try and stop Ben, that just causes things to escalate and further doubt himself, to the point where when Ben first offers Rex to hack the Omnitrix again and fix all this, he actually declines because he's afraid he'll make it worse, which I think is a legitimate fear in this scenario. Rex is a kid, and like Bobo said, while Ben may be able to deal with this sort of thing, Rex is not Ben. He's not a kid who wants to fight for the action. He's a kid on the run from a secret government agency who considers him a potential threat, despite the fact that he's a kid. And Rex's reactions feel very, very real, I suppose, if it makes any sense. It feels like you can tell, whenever you see him running away or having, existential debates, it does feel like something that a real person or a real kid would have in those scenarios. He has no idea where his parents are. He has powers he can barely control. He's aware that he may be patient zero for a potential pandemic. And this on top of that, the secret government agency is after him, and they are willing to shed blood to get him. So so bottom line, it's a wonder that this kid is not a complete mess. So it's good. It's well handled. It's well handled and creates significant drama. And any scene involving Rex and how he develops, I think, is actually really well done and well handled. His character is actually sympathetic while still being recognizable as Rex, as he still has some attitude. He still has Rex's sense of right and wrong. And at the end of the day, it's still cool to see him back in action, even if just for one special, and even if it's not the original Rex. And on top of that, and this is an improvement I think from between the special and Heroes United, him and Ben have great chemistry. Like in Heroes United, they work well together when they're fighting or when they're talking, but unlike in Heroes United, they have moments where they just have slow moments. I already mentioned the part in the episode where Rex talked about his backstory, how he doesn't know what happened to his parents, and how Providence is hunting him and Bobo. But at the same time, what helps too is that Ben actually listens to that. And he does try to be sympathetic, even when he offers Rex to hack the Omnitrix again. He's not trying to rush him or push him at anything, he just asks. Yeah, he snaps. Yeah, he gets angry when Rex runs away, but to be fair, that isn't exactly a bad reaction either, because he Ben's in the middle of a crisis and Rex is literally the only person who can fix it. So I suppose that can make sense. And again, Ben probably didn't have that sense of perspective until it was pointed out to him. Although I think even in the episode when Bobo told him that that Rex wasn't him, Ben didn't fully comprehend it until later. So yeah. Yeah, but even then, I think stuff like that is actually well handled, especially when we see things going wrong. And I think that's another thing about this episode I like. The threat actually does feel like something that will require the attention of both sides of the crossover. Again, I don't like ragging on Heroes United because I do really like Heroes United, but I think the special handles this stuff better in that regard. In the case in point, what brings the heroes together. Like in Heroes United, we had Alpha, and like I said there, Alpha felt more predominantly like a Generator Rex threat with only like the slimmest of ties to Ben 10. The only reason that Ben stuck around was because general heroic duties. He could have left early in the episode. He could have left, and the only reason he got trapped on that Earth is because he refused to leave when the Knights are about to close the portal. But here, this is something that does feel like it requires both sides' attention. The main primary villain is one of Ben's, and the primary threat is something that Rex unintentionally caused, zapping the Omnitrix and causing a lot of people to become infected and transform into Ben's aliens. So as such, this does feel like something that Ben would get Ben's attention, even if Hex wasn't involved, and Rex kind of needs to be a part of it because he was the one that set it off. Add on Hex, who wants to take control of the army to take over the world, and Providence, who's coming in to try and take care of the situation before it gets out of hand, it does feel like something that would require both sides to work together and kind of have to tolerate one another. So I do actually like that. And on top of that, I do like seeing Hex here. He's kind of fun to watch. Definitely not as creepy as his main universe counterpart, but definitely a little hammy, and he's fun, and it's entertaining. I'll say that. And of course, on top of that, there are aspects that I do think work in that regard. Seeing Ben gradually learning more about Rex's side of things, how they work, how they operate, learning what Evos are, learning what Providence is, etc., etc. It definitely feels very organic in how they're doling out information. It doesn't feel like there's heavy exposition dump. Ben learns this as the audience learns this. And to be fair, some of the audience is probably people who watch Generator Rex and thus know about this information. But on the off chance that you're not a fan of Generator Rex, this is a good way of getting you on there. Giving you bits and pieces of the story, but without throwing you in and just being like, okay, here's how this works, here's how that works, yada yada yada, blah blah blah. Same goes for Rex. I do actually kind of like that. And I do like how he does eventually decide to help Ben, because at several times he does want to run away, but ultimately his conscience forces him to go in, despite the fact that he knows that could mean bad things for him, which, again, is a very admirable trait in a kid superhero. So I actually like that. So I actually like that. And of course, the threat is also creative and having having an army of Benzalians under Hex's beck and call, as well as the timer when Providence comes in to try and scorch the Earth. So I like that. I'm a little mixed on 6 being after Rex, but that's mostly because of when I watched Generator Rex, as 6 was essentially like a surrogate father for Rex in that show. And while he could be deadly serious, he didn't just treat Rex like an asset, so to speak. He treated him as a fellow agent and as a kid. He treated him with respect. Treat him with respect, knew when to talk down to him, when to actually treat him as an equal, etc. So seeing him here kind of act as a pseudo-villain / anti-hero kind of feels a little weird to me. Like, it's not awful. It's not awful, and it works, and they still showcase enough badass moments for him. Seriously, I liked the duel he had with Hex. It was actually really fun, and actually really quick-paced, but at the same time, it's still a little weird, especially if you're familiar with the original version. On top of that, though, I think another thing that works about this is the mystery surrounding Rex. One of the big aspects of Generator Rex was the mystery surrounding Rex's backstory, as he suffered amnesia. Here, it feels like here, they have similar things, but Rex does have a more clear picture. He does remember his mom and dad, and they do make it clear there was some kind of an accident, but they don't give enough details because Rex's memory of the event is also hazy. We know that somehow his parents were probably tied to nanites, and that there was probably an accident in this continuity just as there was in the main one. But whereas in the main continuity, that accident resulted in every living thing on Earth being infected with nanites, whatever this was, while it did release nanites, it wasn't to the same degree. So I do like that, and they do leave you asking enough questions by the end. Because, in fact, I think that's another thing about this episode is supposed to be. It feels like a backdoor pilot for a Generator Rex reboot. And I think it could work. It feels like it would be in the same vein as the Ben 10 reboot, albeit with more serious moments, especially regarding Rex and regarding Rex and everything. So I feel like that, and honestly, I think the special does enough to make you interested. Like I said, it reveals enough so that you get a basic idea of Rex's situation without giving you all the details. So I think that'll work. So if this does lead to a reboot, I'd be interested to see where it goes, because I would like to see Generator X get more attention. Seriously, Cartoon Network, release the full series on DVD. I'll buy it. I'll do a vlog on it. I will watch it. Seriously. I'll give you my money right now. But anyway, yeah. But so I do think that works. So let me think. The plot I think the story works well, moving at a decent pace. Moves at a decent pace. I think it has a lot of good character moments. It showcases a lot of interesting angles and where things can go. And also on top of that, the humor is not as annoying as in other specials. Like I said, the humor in the Ben 10 reboot is very hit or miss. But here, while they do have a handful of misses, they're not as prevalent, and they do work. They don't always feel annoying, except for the s'more scene that was just weird. Rex himself is interesting enough. Ben himself isn't as annoying in this special. I suppose if I had to list any flaws, I think one would be the third act. The third act really feels like that. Like, after they got the exposition for the plot done in the first 2/3, the last act definitely feels like a very action-oriented segment. As while they do still fit in some character moments here and there, it's mostly action. And from the moment that Ben sees transformed Max and Gwen, it's just straight on. It's just from there, action, action, action. Pause briefly for some character moments in depth, which actually are well written and well done. Then action, 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 action. Scorched Earth. It definitely feels the finale does feel a little rushed, especially in how easily Rex was converted. Like, that's actually a problem, I think. Rex, throughout the story, felt like he was having problems with his powers, but around the third act, when Rex was able to create different builds, like the legs and his fist, suddenly when Ben offers for him to hack the Omnitrix again, there's no hesitation. He's like, okay, sure, like, I feel like we should have had that, like, at least a little hesitation. Like, maybe like Ben offers it and Rex is considering it, but then says, "Okay, sure." Now, to be fair, there was a missile being thrown at them at that moment, which, yeah, I forgot to mention in the plot summary. Providence did manage to launch a missile. Hex did try to stop Providence, but only one ship managed to shoot one off, which Rex thankfully managed to deflect after they turn everyone back. But at the same time, I feel like there still should be some nervousness. I would understand that he would have enough confidence to want to try it again, but I still feel like that there should have been at least a little hesitance, and I think that kind of comes in the rush nature of the end. Though, to be fair, we do still get at least an epilogue, which I think works well. On top of that, the animation is still weird, and I'm trying to think of what I didn't like. I suppose like I said, there are moments that don't feel as in depth, and the third act definitely feels a little bit more rushed. And I think another problem, and this is also another nitpick I have with the reboot, for some reason in their action scenes, there are scenes where they just don't have music, which, I'm sorry, I feel like that's just distracting. I'm used to hearing music during fight scenes. It helps add gravitas to it and helps set the mood. But then when they have fight scenes where there is no music, it feels just kind of bland to watch. Okay, okay, actually that's another thing. One of the things that mixed on the episode are the fight scenes. They're not, like, the reboot has some decent fight scenes in their show, but like the humor, there are times that that feels a little, but it doesn't work. Like this special, and don't get me wrong, the special has plenty of good fight scenes, but they don't feel as complex as they could be in other specials. Though they do have their kick-ass moments, like when Rex is able to deflect the missile, the fight between Six and Hex, and honestly, when Ben was fighting Gwen, because like I said, she transformed into forearms, and then so Ben decided to go forearms to try and fend her off. Which honestly, I thought that was really kick-ass, and I loved it so much. But again, I feel like that's kind of a bit kind of a problem. Like the third act does feel a little rushed and does kind of rush some certain character moments that should be more that feel like they should have been in there more and done better. So yeah, I'm gonna knock that against the special. And on top of that, I think Ben's conflict with Summercation, while not bad, and I think handled decently, I feel it could have been more elaborated on. But again, that one that feels more of the minor flaw. And I already talked about, and I suppose another thing could be the convenience of Hex being able to take control of the army like that. Like, if he has a spell which can literally take control of people's minds, why doesn't he use it more often? Like, I'm not kidding. He just swoops in during the episode while Ben is fighting Six in Providence, or Ben and Rex, yeah. And then he decides, okay, let's take advantage of the situation, zap, and suddenly everyone in Washington D.C. who's been infected by the Omnitrix is now under his sway. Like, is part of the conundrum with the spell being that someone has to be altered somewhat? Because that feels like a very dumb stipulation. Because if you have this spell, why don't you use it more often? It would make taking over the world a lot easier. Just saying. So I feel like that's a little too convenient as well. And again, I already talked about how I'm mixed on Six being an enemy. I like seeing him as an ally, so it's kind of weird seeing him like this. And while there are still plenty of good character moments between Rex and Ben, there are, like I said, that finale does feel that finale does feel a little rushed in that form of development. Again, and so I'm trying to think. Because there were aspects of the special that I knew I was scratching my head at. I know, like the s'more segment, which, I'm sorry, I think was even weird in the case of the reboot. Just trying to think. Was there aspects I didn't like? Well, honestly, again, I already talked about the action. It's hit or miss, so I feel like that may be a minor flaw, plus the music. And then, of course, there were a couple moments here, and like the third act. So I think I've kind of covered what I didn't like, honestly. I'm a little mixed on Rex. The action is hit or miss as well. It's hit or miss. Third act rush. Action is hit or miss. I'm mixed on what they do with what they did with Six, but the thing is, honestly, I think the special is pretty good. The story, for the most part, moves at a decent pace up until the third act, when it's mostly just action again. We got some good character moments between Ben and Rex that flesh out both of their characters and showcase more of what they're dealing with. Rex is actually written very well and treated with and his situation is given the appropriate weight that it deserves. The action is the action, while not always great, does have plenty of moments that made me go, "Oh hell yeah!" to watch. Hex is appropriately hammy and fun, which, while different from what I'm used to, is not that bad here. That bad here. And and of course even Ben's plot I think is handled well too. Again, the flaws are that the third act feels a bit more rushed and it feels too convenient for Hex to win like he did, and there were some moments that made me scratch my head and go, "Huh?" too. But for the most part, I think Ben Gen 10 is a pretty good special. Not great, but pretty good. I liked it more than I honestly thought I would, especially for for an episode in the reboot, which I've gone on record and said I'm not that big a fan of. So the fact that I think I enjoyed it, and if they do make another Generator Rex reboot using this as the backdoor pilot, I wouldn't be against it. I actually think it might be pretty good. So yeah, if there's a reboot of that, I'd be interested in watching that. So hopefully that comes of it. So overall, yeah, Ben Gen 10 is pretty good. Better than I thought it would be. So yeah, I think that's about it. I wish I could say more. I really could, but that's kind of all I can think of. This is why these vlogs are completely unprofessional and craptacular. But if you did enjoy these vlogs, then I'm glad that you decided to come with me and watch all these various specials and watching and even when while these specials did kind of vary in quality, I don't think there was one of them that I honestly hated. Each of them in some way or another had something about them that worked and made me interested in seeing where they went. And the thing is, the one prominent feature that all these specials had that I think that makes crossovers work as well as they do, they were all fun. All of them were able to make it work. Were able to take the idea of two franchises coming together and working off each other and make it fun. It was great seeing characters from Ben 10 crossing over with all these different Cartoon Network franchises and characters. It was fun seeing Ben working alongside Rex and facing monsters with him. It was cool seeing Ben working side by side with the Secret Saturdays to take on Vivi Argos. It was cool seeing Ben joining a gaggle of other Cartoon Network characters to defeat this interdimensional weirdo in a red suit. And of course, it was cool here seeing Ben and Rex fighting side by side against an army of Omnitrix monsters. I thought it was honest, even when each special varied in quality, because, like, again, Heroes United was pretty good. TGIS, I think, was all right. TGIS, I think, was all right. Okay, Crossover Nexus, I think I should downgrade to just being okay. And this one, I think, was ranged from pretty good to all right. But no matter which one I watched, I don't think I had a bad time. There were lulls, certainly, but each special in some way offered something unique and interesting. And that's what I think a crossover should do. It takes these two very different franchises, or multiple franchises for certain crossovers, like Crossover Nexus, and finds a way to mesh them together to make it just to make it interesting. Take these things that don't normally work together and just seeing what happens when you put them in the same room with each other. Do they clash, or do they mesh well? And I love seeing that. I love seeing these things come together. And that was another main reason I wanted to do these vlogs. Not just because I wanted to get back to Ben 10, but because I love seeing crossovers. And I wanted to see more of that with Ben 10. And for the most part, I think I got that with these specials. Like I said, it was cool seeing Ben interacting with all these different characters in all these different scenarios. Each of them were varied and unique, but all of them were able to bring Ben in, have him interact with all these unique and different characters, and they did it well. Not always great, not always perfect, but still entertaining enough so that I think if you tuned in to watch them, no matter what your thoughts were of the special in the end, I think you would have a good time. So, if you enjoyed these vlogs and you decide to check out any of these specials because of them, I hope you liked them too. And like I said, if you enjoyed, and like I said, I thank you for joining me on these. And I'd like to also give a special thank you for Levi Church for unintentionally inspiring me to do these vlogs. Like I said, they may be craptacular, but I still had a lot of fun doing them. And Levi, if you're watching this, thank you again. It was fun to watch all these and even watch a couple that I'd never seen until I did these vlogs. So thank you again for that. And if you want to follow me on any of my social media, I have a Twitter, a Tumblr, and an Instagram. I'll post links to them in the description. But at the end of the day, I had a lot of fun doing these. It was obviously a short vlog. It was obviously a short vlog series. It was mostly just here to kind of give me a breather after 2 years of Code Lyoko. But if you genuinely enjoyed them, I'm glad. And if you didn't, that's perfectly fine too. You're free to have your own opinion, and I'll be the first to admit these vlogs aren't that great. But I do genuinely hope you had a good time with me as I went through them. And next week we're gonna be starting a new vlog, and this is another one I'm actually looking forward to because it's actually gonna be looking at a series that actually I think deserves a little bit more attention, and I hope I will be able to give it more with my next vlog. And honestly, this series is actually coincidental with actually coinciding with another big thing that's happening at the time. Well, it's some you'll see when I get to it. But needless to say, I think it'll be a lot of fun. So yeah, if you like it, so thank you. So like I said, thank you again for watching. My name is Samuel Johnson, and keep enjoying crossovers, everyone. And if there's ever a new Ben 10 crossover that's been if there's ever a new Ben 10 televised crossover, you'll of course be able to see it. You'll of course expect me to see it here. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I should probably end this now before my tongue goes into varying directions as it tries to cobble together varying sentences that shouldn't be cobbled together. So, take care, everyone, and good night.